Are you trying to get into programming because you want to work remotely? Like, is your fantasy waking up in the morning, being in your pajamas, opening up your laptop and getting to work? Or maybe another fantasy is traveling the world, right? Like being a digital nomad and just traveling the world while you're working. These are awesome reasons to want to get into software development. But in this video, what I wanted to do is give you the reality check about what it actually takes to become a remote worker. Now, this is from my perspective of doing this for about 4 years. And I want to give you just that, again, like that reality of what you can expect versus maybe what your expectations are. Now, if you're new here to this channel and you're wondering who I am, I'm Andy Sterkowitz. I'm a self-taught programmer. I taught myself back in 2014. I landed my first job in 2015. And so I really focus this channel on how to become a programmer. So a lot of tactics, tricks, any advice I can give you is what this channel is all about. So I highly recommend hitting the subscribe button below. Also, make sure to hit the bell icons to get notifications anytime I put out a new video. Like many of you, I definitely started out with remote work in mind when I first decided to make this career change. I was always used to working like blue collar jobs, like I was a car salesman, I worked at Starbucks, I had worked as a law clerk, a server, all this sort of stuff. Those jobs you can't do remote, obviously. So my sort of fantasy was that I was gonna be a remote worker and I was gonna be able to travel when I wanted to, go live in maybe some exotic places if I wanted to, or just maybe go on more vacations and have sort of like a work vacation. I also wanted to make more money. I mean, that was a big draw as well. I also wanted to do a career I love. Those were all things I wanted to do, but definitely remote work was a big part of that. Now, surprisingly for me, I did not decide like, okay, my first job has to be remote work. I figured what I was going to do was really focus the early part of my career on just getting better to the point where I had the skills where I could go out and maybe find a remote job in the job market, or I can negotiate with my company if I really like them to work remotely more often, or maybe go 100% remote. And so that was always my frame of mind. And what ended up happening for me is I found my first job in 2015. I worked there for about 2 years. That was obviously I had to work at the location, and I worked remotely occasionally at that job, just maybe on like a Friday occasionally, or if I went on vacation, they'd let me go, but it wasn't 100% remote, not even close. After about working there for 2 years, another company wanted to hire me, and they wanted it 100% remote because they were located in Pittsburgh and I was located in Chicago. At that point, I was 2 years in. I felt very confident in my skills, and I was like, let's do this. And that's where I started my 100% remote work, and I've been doing that ever since. So that should give you a pretty good idea of what my strategy was starting out. Like, it was clear that for me, I needed to build my skills to a high level, and then I could sort of dictate where I was going to go. I was going to influence, the likelihood of finding a remote position. So for those of you out there who are like, you know what, that's great, that's awesome, but for me, I got to get there as fast as possible. Like, my first job has to be a remote position. The first thing I urge for a lot of you guys is to really question your motives. So for some of you, like, you love software development, you want to get into this right reasons, and maybe you live in a rural town, so remote is like your only option. But if you are getting into software development because you just love the idea of remote work and you don't really like the software development side of things, or you can put up with it, I would urge you to reconsider this. Like, it's going to be a long journey to teach yourself to code or learn to code. And that alone is not going to give you enough motivation to get there. There's going to be challenging times in this process. If you see my channel, I've talked a lot about how hard this can be. And so it's just not going to give you enough motivation to do it. And there's a lot of other great jobs out there that you can do remotely, but this is probably not one for you. You should be doing this because you want to get into software development. Like, you like this as a career. Maybe you tried, you've learned a little bit about it. You've done some coding on your own and you've enjoyed that process. Now, if you know that about yourself, you're doing it for the right reasons. Now, just know that if you're going to pursue this, like, you're going to make this your first job, like, you want to get a remote position as your first job, know that, look, it is possible, meaning like other people have done it. But I have to tell you, it's going to be really challenging. Most companies don't want to hire somebody as a remote worker without experience, because it's hard to manage that person. It's hard to mentor that person. It's hard to train them to be a better software developer because of the gap, because of the distance. When a new software developer, when a junior developer works on site, it's much easier to mentor them, to walk them through things, to teach them that system, the application. For whatever reason, I've experienced it myself. It's just much easier to communicate when you're on site and there's other people physically there. When you're a remote worker, it's very difficult to do that. So if you're an experienced developer, remote work is awesome because you can kind of go do your own thing. There's not somebody typically sitting over you, and the company loves that because they can just kind of let you be and do your thing. But as a new developer, it's just a little bit harder. It's just hard enough to make it difficult. And so companies tend to shy away from that. Companies shy away from it because it's very expensive to hire somebody. If things don't work out, they spend a lot of time training that person. They've invested a lot of money into them. And so again, they want something that's going to be more sure. So there's a much smaller pool of potential jobs out there for people like yourself, for people who are junior level or lack the experience to really be a developer remotely. So if there's a lot smaller pool, there's higher competition. So you have to have a much more refined skill set. You have to also know how to market yourself, make yourself stand out from all those other developers. And of course, you have to get a little bit lucky because there's always going to be a little bit of luck involved when you get hired by a company. So knowing that could extend your timeline out. Meaning if you thought this is going to take 6 months or a year, it might take twice as long or 3 times as long, because again, you're going to have to go through all those job applications. You might get rejected. You are going to have to get your skills a lot higher. So it's going to take you longer to do that. If you're cool with that, if you're absolutely cool with that, then just know that that's the reality of the situation. Now, for those of you who are like, I don't want to do that at all, then maybe you should consider just doing the regular route of trying to get that first job at a company, work there physically, and then you can worry about the remote job after a year or 2. I recommend that approach because I think that's the best way to do it. Get mentorship early on, you'll learn a ton, and then you'll have options later. The remote part is very hard, in my opinion. I would not have tried to choose that for myself, but ultimately, that's your decision to make. All right, so that's pretty much it. So I hope this video has been helpful for those of you who are dead set on becoming a remote software developer. I think that you should change your expectations if they're unrealistic, and this should give you a better sense of how to approach it. So if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. Other than that, that's really all I've got for today. So thank you so much, as always, for watching, and peace out. Have a good one, guys.